welcome to Historical Airsoft. This is part 2 of the AGM MP40 Makeover. Today we're going to be looking at sanding and other weathering techniques. In the last video we covered painting the Bakelite sections of the gun. This time we're going to move to more advanced stuff with sanding and other techniques to make this thing look more original, more used. You would never see a German soldier in combat with a brand new looking MP40. Before we get going, I just wanted to cover some basic concepts when it comes to weathering a replica firearm to make it look more like a used original. Anywhere that pokes out from the gun, any place that would have a significant amount of contact with either the soldier's other gear, maybe a place that was set down, or the soldier's hands, are the places that you would see being the most weathered. I've already experimented around a little bit on this gun with the button for the folding stock, which in all original pictures I've seen never holds any resemblance of the original paint job. The piece of the handguard right there underneath the Bakelite, and the ribs on the magazine well. More will be done to all of these, as well as many other places on the gun. The tools I'll be using will just be simple sandpaper, as well as, though we might not end up needing them, some simple acrylic paints involving silver, gloss black, and flat black to maybe tune up a couple of areas once we're done, or maybe cover up some areas that we might accidentally sand or not need to sand. I'll also be weathering some magazines. I have 6 magazines for this gun at the moment. I just thought that for the video, I'd focus on one and just show some basic techniques. Another thing of note, what I'm going to show in this is not specific to this MP40. This is just for the MP40 Makeover series, to try to show how you could take your own MP40 and make it look better, but any of these techniques can be applied to any weapon. There's no real process or complicated thing that you'd have to know to go into doing this. I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, are very nervous to modify their airsoft gun's appearance, physical appearance, whether that is to do a paint job on it, camouflage paint job, anything like that. And really, it doesn't always matter. If the gun is black, you don't like how the camo looks, spray paint it black. That's why we have the black paint right here. Anyway, there's no complicated process or weird things that you'd have to know before going into this. It really is very intuitive what you're doing. You're just grabbing some sandpaper and sanding down areas that are poking out. Many people are very nervous, especially the first time modifying airsoft guns, whether that is their appearance, the internals, a camouflage paint job, anything like that. But especially on the externals and the appearance of the gun from the outside, it is all reversible. That's why we have the black paint with us, so there's no need to be afraid of jumping right into it and experimenting around. So, again, it's not a complicated process. You don't want to over sand, but you do want to create a sense of wear and tear. Like this charging handle, throughout whichever conflict, Eastern Front, Western Front, this MP40 would have served through, that is probably one of the most, one of the set parts on the gun that has the most contact with anything else. Unlike my first video, I'll be just showing little clips of what I'm doing as time goes by. There's no need for me to sit here and have my camera rolling for 20 minutes, 25 minutes while I sit here and sand a fake gun. So I'll get back to you guys once I've made a little bit more progress. Alright, so I thought I would want to show you an example of good and bad weathering when working on a replica like this. So I've already started to go in and around the hinge. I've started to weather that down a bit, around the trigger guard, just a little bit. Again, it's best to do this in small increments around the charging handle, but I also went ahead and over-sanded this whole area. Now, this is one thing that you don't want to do. You don't want to jump right in without having a clear-cut plan of what you're going to do and start sanding away at anything that sticks out. But of course, this all can be repaired. The reason I went ahead and did this is so I can show you how easy it is to go ahead and paint this over and try again and make it look a lot better. Alright, so we have our flat black paint, and similarly to what we did earlier on the Bakelite, we're not going to completely cover it up. Because one thing that we can try to do, if you do oversand an area or don't like the way it looks, is try to just, instead of completely cover it, just thin it out, which is again exactly what we did with the Bakelite. So, you put some on the affected areas, grab some paper towel, and just work it a little bit. You can already see that it does not look as completely silver as it did just a couple minutes ago. And again, everything needs to be done over and over again. I'm also planning on going back and doing this to most of the sections I sand throughout the entire gun at the very end. Because, again, we're trying to make this look as natural as possible, not like some dude took a piece of sandpaper to it. Already it's starting to look a lot better than how it did just a couple moments ago. Again, another example of customization in Airsoft is completely reversible, as long as you don't, go in super deep at the very beginning. There's always a chance to try again. Alright, awesome. A little bit of an update on the sanding. I've started to sand the trigger guard a bit more, all of these areas. Also, another thing I didn't mention and forgot to point out is any place there's a curved area that pokes out, that is also an area that would be sanded down, or an area that is worn down. Also on this side, same place. I've started to get certain areas on the grip and the hinges. I've started moving towards the front of the gun in these areas. This needs to be tuned up a lot more. That is one area that you always see, this little lug on the front of the outer barrel. So there's a quick little update for you. The next thing I'm going to do is paint the actual bolt on the inside. I'll do very, very light silver and get rid of everything that doesn't need to be done. I've already done one very light coat. It shows up a lot better on camera than it does in real life. So just like a little bit of silver paint. I purposely have not mixed this up very well because we want very thin and watery. Very thin and watery. Already it's a bit too thick, so we're not going to put any more on the brush and just spread this out. Alright, so when this dries, it will not appear as shiny as it does now, and it'll look a lot better. Most of the sanding that we need to do on the outside is already done. We've gone on both sides and gone to all the places that would have needed to have been sanded down due to wear and tear in real life. But we're not close to being done yet. There's still a couple more things that we need to do on the gun before we can move on and start working on the magazines. Similarly to what we did with the bolt on the other side, we're going to do on this side as well. So, very thin layer of silver paint, and if it doesn't turn out looking good, we can always put water over it to try to spread it out a little bit. We do not want this to be thick at all. We just want it to be a little bit of a color contrast between the flat black on everything else. We're trying to gradually stroke it out, make it less apparent, and we don't want it to seem like anything was painted here. We just want it to seem like this was just the color of that spot in the first place. This brush is completely dry, by the way, just being used to help spread that out. And there's that section down in there as well, and I'm going to go ahead and get that at the same time. Alright, looks pretty good. Next is the very tip of the barrel. Just like everything else, again, it would not stay completely pristine, but underneath the layer of black paint is the standard orange tip. Where I live, in Utah, there are no laws against painting over the orange tip, and my thought process is the only time this is ever going to be out is either at my house or at a designated airsoft field. So there'd be no chance for confusion with police or anyone calling the police. Anyway. Just gonna do similar thing, just small little layering. And then wipe at least part of it off afterwards. You can see on this piece of the upper receiver, I've gone through and done a very thin layer of silver paint and then gone over the silver paint with black paint again to give it this worn look that gets rid of the kind of almost glossy effect that the normal black paint job this came in gives off. I'm going to proceed to do that to some other places in the gun. Not every place, just some other places. The last thing left to do is to rough up the edges on the magazines. You could totally do more than what I have right here, and I plan on doing more in the future as well. I just thought that I'd show this as a little bit of an example. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks for all the support I've gotten so far, guys. There's lots of more stuff I've got planned coming down the pipeline, so keep your eyes open. Until next time, this has been Historical Airsoft. You have a nice day.